What's going on, guys? We're going to do an 800-mile review on this Can-Am Renegade. 798 to be exact. So we're at 1 year, 798 miles. Let's check how many hours quickly. 49.7 hours. So about 50 hours on the machine and 800 miles. Had it for exactly a year now. So let's talk about it. So as you guys may or may not know, if you follow my channel regularly, you know this is my wife's unit. It's a 2022 Can-Am Renegade 1000R, and it's the XXC model. And you're probably thinking, I've never seen one in this color, and you're right. This machine, as it comes in 2022, or as it came in 2022, I should say, was gray with orange handlebars, orange. I say orange. It's called magma red. It's very close to orange. It can go either way, somewhere in the middle of the spectrum. But had the red orange bumper, B-lock rings, decals. All the decals you see in pink were in that color, reddish orange. Hand guards were that color, and the handlebars were that color. The seat also had that color around the back. So my wife wanted to make it her own, and that was the first step in what she did to customize it. So in this video, I'm going to talk about everything we've done to it so far, and then we'll go over how it's been used, the reliability of it, if it's broken down, what issues we've had, if any, and likes and dislikes. So grab a drink, probably going to be a little bit, and let's get into it. So to start, she did the decals. Decals come from a company called TNT Kits, and they do they do full-on wraps if you want for Renegades and stuff. They're based out of Canada, so they get a lot of Can-Am stuff, and they have a lot of wraps ready to go, wrap designs, and they'll custom do stuff for you too. But they do the decals in any color you want them. You can even do like a gradient color pattern, like start one color and fade into another, however you like it. So my wife just got rid of all the orange, made everything basically black and pink. That was the first thing she did. And then last Christmas, because she got this right before last Christmas, so right around this time in December last year, she got the Rough Country rack from my brother and sister-in-law for Christmas. So she went ahead and installed that. Almost all the, actually I shouldn't say almost, all the mods you see here she did herself, except for the skid plates. So the next thing that she did was she got some customization going on back here too. So definitely identifiable as a female-ridden machine. No performance mods yet. What she did, the Checo Racing water pump guard. This water pump and a water pump hose is pretty vulnerable. So Checo Racing makes a nice guard. And she has an install video on all this stuff. If you want to, I'll leave a link to that video at the end of this one. You can check it out if you want for all the mods that were done by her. There's a video on that. And then so after that, she also did the Checo Racing rear fender supports. So these fenders can get a little floppy with time. And you'll see these are pretty rigid. They're not going anywhere. And that's because the fender supports there, these right here, that's not standard on the machine. But they do just bolt into a location right here. Includes all the hardware and everything. It's literally a 2-second job. And that gives a lot of support to the fenders. So again, another good product. Everybody always asks about the license plate and how we mount it. This is actually a bracket from Can-Am. So Can-Am makes these. They sell them on their website. I think we got them from a Can-Am supplier or a parts store on Amazon. I want to say it was maybe somewhere around $25, $30, but nothing crazy. And then moving up, a small little modification, but this is just a whip flag holder. So we go to the dunes and other locations that you need to use a whip flag, and you just stick it in, screw it down, and so I have those on all my machines. Just makes it quick and easy. to go. Stick the flags in and ready to ride. Take them off, load them on the trailer, and you're done. Hand guards are standard on the XXC model, but we went from the orange to the black ones. And then what else did we do? Oh yeah, she got LED headlights. They're standard. They're the headlights are original, but she just changed out the bulbs. I'll give you a quick glimpse of those. So you can see they're white instead of yellow, amber. The headlights project pretty good, standard ones, but they are yellowy looking. This gives it a little more custom look. Nice clear white LED. And then also the rear bulbs are LED also, I should mention that. The rear taillight bulbs are LED because they actually went out. We were riding a couple weeks ago and I noticed the left taillight was out. So I just went to a local auto parts store and they had LED replacement bulbs for these. So just grabbed those. They're just the standard automotive dual filament bulb. And got the LED ones. They don't make much of a difference, but they'll last without blowing. So that was really the reason for that. And then as far as other modifications go, they come standard with the central skid plate right here, the central aluminum skid plate, and that starts here and works its way to about right there. You see the seam. So we installed the rear section and the front section, and I did those, and they comes up around. From the factory, the front one is just plastic, and then the rear one, there's nothing there. So we installed these. I will give you a little tip with the front one. Before you install it, I would suggest drilling a hole. So you don't see I have a hole right there? That hole is so that you can drain the front diff fluid without having to take the skid plate on and off. The factory plastic one has no hole. So what I did was I used the factory plastic one as a template. I made the hole to line up with the drain plug, transferred that over to the aluminum one, drilled it out before I installed it on the machine. And this way we can go through, change the fluids. I don't got to worry about taking the skid plate off, which is kind of crazy. So that is that. So that's pretty much it in terms of modifications. The rest of the machine is stock. So the 1 year, all the modifications we've done so far are pretty much cosmetic. And, for protection purposes. This year we're going to get heavy into performance modifications. So exhaust, tune, we're going to widen it out a little bit, and I'll tell you why in a minute. So then what we'll do is we'll do videos on all that stuff and the difference it makes. And I'm also going to plan on doing a little more of I have one video out already, kind of a side-by-side comparison of this and then my 4x4 machine, which is the Scrambler 1000. But we're going to plan on doing some more out in the field testing, showing how the suspension works differently, power-wise, how it handles, and all stuff like that. So, but back to the Renegade, which is what this video is about. So I would say, as far as reliability goes, there has been nothing wrong, nothing I can bad say about it. I mean, it starts up every time, runs flawless. No issues whatsoever. She had a Can-Am Renegade 570 before this one. And everybody complains about heat on these machines, and they do run a little bit hot. And I will tell you, if you're going to ride one, you're going to want to have at least good pants or high boots. My wife wears Alpine Star riding boots, so it kind of alleviates the issue. But your right leg on this machine is going to cook, like, severely with the heat that the right side of the engine throws off. So you're definitely going to want to take that into consideration. You're not going out on this machine with shorts and sneakers, because your right calf will look like roasted turkey leg by the end of a couple hours of riding. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to be very comfortable. So you're going to want to wear boots or pants. We do plan on tuning it, which should help the temperature a little bit. Like I was saying, she had a Renegade 570 prior to this one that she upgraded from that to this. And that machine actually ran hotter, believe it or not. I don't know why. We even had that one tuned, which helped a little bit, but there was still a tremendous amount of heat thrown from the right side on that one, more so than this one even. So that's something to consider when you're thinking about purchasing one. They don't make the 570s anymore new, but if you found one used and you're thinking about it, just another thing to keep in mind. And the 570 doesn't come with power steering at all. So in terms of like I was saying, the reliability has been good. Haven't had any issues. On the original belt, I have taken the belt cover off and blown out the clutches, which is something you should do. If you've never had a CVT driven machine, you want to maintain and clean out the clutches regularly. That's the biggest reason why you have your clutches fail early or clutching issues, is people don't maintain them. And they need to be maintained just like anything else, even if it's just simply cleaning them out, inspecting them regularly. My method is about every 500 miles, take the clutch cover off and check the clutches, make sure for wear, make sure everything looks good. Check the belt, make sure that looks good and is not worn. The book will give you actually, from if I remember correctly, the actual specs of the width of the belt, what it should be, if you can use a set of caliper gauges and how much the belt is worn, and you can check that. But I check for visible wear too, in between the cogs of the belt. You want to look for cracking, any cords showing, stuff like that. She doesn't drive very aggressively, so this belt will last likely quite a while. Like, we have 1,000 miles on it now. I don't see any reason to change it. When I checked it at 500 miles, there was barely any wear. The clutches were very dirty though. We do ride in dusty conditions, so you want to take some compressed air. If you have a compressor, put a blowgun on the end of it and blow out all your clutches good. Run it with the cover off, start it up so the clutches spin, and just blow it all out till no more dust is coming out. And that goes for the primary and the secondary. Every nook and cranny, blow out all the dust and the dirt. I suggest you do it outside the garage, because it'll be a cloud inside when you do it. There's going to be a lot of dust comes out. Some of the dust is wear from the belt, and a lot of it is just from the air it's pulling in, and then dust gets caught in there, and then before it gets blown out, all the dust doesn't leave. It just builds up inside the clutches. So all that stuff, if left in there, is going to wear out your clutches. You want to get that stuff blown out. And that goes to any machine with a CVT clutch. Can-Am, Polaris, Hondas, any type of quad you have with a CVT, that's what you want to do. You want to blow the clutches out regularly. That goes for side-by-sides also. As far as maintenance goes, I've done all the fluids at about, twice now, so maybe even 3 times. I did all the fluids twice, and then I did the rear diff 3 times. So I did at about 250 miles, I did all the fluids, and then at 500 and about 525 miles, I did all the fluids again. It's good now. I'll just do the oil next time, and then the rest of the fluids the time after that. The differential fluids and the tranny fluid can be left a lot longer. It just uses standard GL5, 7590 and 75140 fluid. Engine is, I used 550 AMSOIL for ATVs. So it's something that's not the easiest thing to do on these machines as far as changing the fluids. I much prefer changing fluids on another machine, any other machine almost. It is a little bit difficult and messy, and I would say that is probably the biggest drawback. That, and I'm not a fan of the Airbox design on the machine. I'll get into that in a minute. Those are the 2 things that I'm not a fan of about the machine. Front diff fluid is not that bad once you have the hole in the skid plate like I showed you. You'll drain the fluid out, fill it up right here. That's the easiest one. The tranny is difficult because the fill bolt, it's hard to even see it. There's a white plastic plug down at the bottom under here, behind the footwell on the transmission. I don't know if you can see it from back here. No, you can't. But you have to take, the easiest way to do it is just you take this plastic piece off, which is easy, 2 10mm bolts, and it comes out. Take the footwell off, and then you'll have access to it. The drain is right there, and the fill, and the fluid, you got to pump it in without taking all this stuff off, and to get the plug in and out is just an absolute nightmare. You got to take this whole footwell off to do transmission. So that's pretty much a must. I mean, I shouldn't say it's a must, because you can do it another way, but it's just, by the time you finagle and get in there and special tools and wrenches and try and get that bolt out and the drain plug out and get the fluid pumped in, it's just easier to take the footwell off and do it, and then put it back on. The engine oil is fairly simple. Your dipstick is right here. Oil filter is right here. Drain bolt on the bottom. Simple stuff. Rear diff is, I wouldn't say difficult, but extremely messy. The reason for that is, you'll see we have the rear skid plate on here, but the frame itself has you have your two frame rails, and then in between is a plate welded that supports the rear diff and then supports the rear of the frame. Now, the drain is right here. It's just a tiny little Allen head. And when I say tiny, I mean you take that, you see how big it is about right there. When you pull that out, the fluid comes out so slow, it's like a trickle. And then you'll see there's nowhere for it to go except for down onto the frame plate and all over your skid plate. So it just runs all over the whole underside of the machine. I've rinsed it off 3 times since the last fluid change, and you'll see there's still residue, you know, even with the greaser and all that stuff. So that's, I don't know why they designed it like that. I don't know why they couldn't put a rear differential in here where the drain plug's on the bottom and it just simply comes straight down like every other manufacturer almost. And even if it's a side one, make it bigger and have an access hole for it to just fall out. It's kind of silly, the design. That's definitely a drawback. If you're not a fan, if you do your own maintenance and you're not really a fan of doing your own maintenance, but you just do it to save money, you're not going to enjoy doing the maintenance on this machine. I can tell you right now. There's a million grease zerks, so you're going to be, you know, find that there's grease fittings everywhere. You know, you have 1, 2 right here. There's several. There's another one on this rear arm. I forget where it is located, honestly, right now off the top of my head. But in the front, there's a million of them. The drive shaft uses universal joints, like an old school truck where you can grease your universal joints. Those are greasable, so you got to kind of get your hose in there and, you know, position the drive shaft in such a way to get it in there, because the drive shaft is a little bit of an angle. And you can kind of see it better from here. If I can get it in there and show you. But so you have a couple there. You have some on for the rear sway bar, and they're back there. So I mean, there's grease fittings everywhere on this thing, and you know, they're not easy to get to, some of them, and it's nice that they include them, but there's a lot of them. And then the front, you have 4 just on the control arms, and so, you know, and also the front sway bar right here too. So you have all these grease fittings. Just do them every few hundred miles. One thing I will tell you is you're still going to squeak, and the culprit is for the squeaks for the rear end. It's these arms. They don't use a normal sway bar link. Can-Am has this. It's kind of like a bracket, so it bolts to the lower trailing arm, and then it bolts to the sway bar. So it's not like your normal sway bar end link with a little ball joint at the end or whatever. These are just brackets with bushings, and you can grease them, but they're still going to squeak. And even if you get it to stop squeaking, it's going to squeak, you know, a mile into your next ride. And it's just nature of the beast. It is what it is. I've looked high and low for somebody who makes a better designed arm or link for these, and I haven't found any. If somebody knows of them, please leave a comment or a link in the comments of the video here below. I'd love to look into getting them, because I think this is a horrible design as far as, like, you know, serviceability and them squeaking all the time. If you're greasing them, they shouldn't squeak, but yet they squeak anyway. It doesn't make any sense. So that's, you know, maintenance is a drawback a little bit in terms of fluid changes. In terms of belt maintenance, it's fairly easy because the belt's pretty accessible. Unlike some other machines, you can get the belt cover off right here. It's very accessible. It's easier to take the footwell off. Again, you do not have to, though, to get the belt cover off on this. You can just take all those bolts off around, and you can kind of wiggle it out enough and get it off. You don't, but again, I like to do things easier. Use some cordless tools and just pop this well off. If you're out in the trail and you want to do it, you blow a belt. Obviously, you want to do it least invasive as possible, so you can get it off. But If you're doing it at home in your garage and you're going to blow the clutches out and you want to really inspect everything good, just take the footwell off. It takes an extra 10 minutes, but it makes your life a lot easier and saves you knuckles. So there you'll see the LED headlights too, the headlight bulbs that are in there. What we were talking about before. While we're over here looking at the shocks, let's talk about the suspension on this thing. So that is really something that I would say is a positive and a negative. Positive being they give you high-end, fully adjustable Fox suspension. For the most part, they're very, very good. I will say they're a little hard to get fine-tuned to comfort in terms of if the fact right now we have them at the factory settings because we found that if you run them softer, the front end, to kind of make the ride more comfortable, it tends to bottom out more and bottom out easy, I should say, in the front. If you crank them up, the high-speed compression, if you crank it up a little bit, then it rides like a brick, unless you're going fast. So the way the suspension is tuned and sprung, it's kind of designed for, moderate pace trail riding. If you're going 35, 40 miles an hour and, hit some stuff, you can crank up the high-speed compression on here and it'll eat up a lot of stuff. But if you want overall comfort with bottoming out resistance, they didn't really tune them that way. In other words, you can't run them soft and not bottom, and they'll bottom out easy. You're going to have to sacrifice some slow speed riding comfort for the high speed stuff. There's just no two ways about it. You can't have both with these shocks. I think a simple revalve of the shocks probably be a night and day difference. We may look into doing that. That'll probably be at the bottom end of the mod list. I would say the first thing we're going to do is we're going to ditch these tires and widen the machine out a little bit. And there's really not that many ways to widen these machines out. Actually, there's really no other ways to widen these machines out other than getting offset wheels or run wheel spacers, which is the same as running an offset wheel. You're just moving the center of the wheel out a little bit. So I'm thinking about maybe some 1 inch or 1.5 inch spacers. I don't want to go too big. I know some people, a lot of people in the Renegade world run 2 inch wides, 2 inch spacers on each side, and plus offset wheels and really widen the hell out of it. But I don't want to put that much stress on components. I just want to get a little bit more width. It's about a 48 to 49 inch wide machine, stock. And I know they do that because certain rules in GNCC racing, I don't think you can be over 50 inches. And, this pretty much rules the day in 4x4 class GNCC racing. Hence the name XC. And it even says GNCC right on the machine. That's what it's built for, and I get that. A couple inches wider, I think, really would change the characteristics of this machine big time. So we're going to kind of fiddle with that a little bit. And because our style of riding, we do a lot of mountain riding. We go up in the mountains. It could be rocky and washed out in some areas with some hills and descents. And when you're going down those descents that are rutted out and washed out from previous, flooding and rain, and there's some rocks, rock-strewn trails, it can feel a little bit tippy if you're not the most experienced rider. That can be, an uncomfortable feeling for you. So if it was wider a little bit, it would give you definitely a much more stable footprint. Also, the front tires, they say they're 8 inch wide, but compared to any other 8 inch wide tire I've looked at on the market, they are extremely skinny. I mean, they're barely bigger than my hand. So they run very small. On the machine, they're about 23.5 inches tall in the front only. And the rear's also labeled a 25 inch tire. That's 25 by 10 in the rear, 25 by 8 in the front. The rears measure about 24.5, 24.25. So there's almost a 1 inch difference in ground height, ride height, from front to rear because of the tires alone. So you do lose a little ground clearance running the stock tires in the front. Once the suspension has settled and stuff like that, and with that skid plate on there, it's under 10 inches of ground clearance in the front. Now the rear's got about 10 inches. The front's under that. It's probably closer to 9. So what we're probably going to do is get a true 25-inch tire, front and rear, or maybe a 26, not sure yet. Don't want to go too big because we don't want to bring the height of the machine up to where we want to get rid of that tippy feeling. So maybe widen it out a little bit, maybe 1 inch, 1.5 inch wheel spacers, some better tires, maybe some true 8-inch wide tires, keep the staggered setup for now, and then see how it is. I want to keep the stock wheels and then just try a different set of tires on it and widen it and see how it goes. After that, what we'll do is probably do a slip-on exhaust. She doesn't want it loud, but it does need something. I mean, it is a Renegade 1000. It's got to sound like one. So we want to add a little bit of oomph to it, and just so you know she's there when she's coming up the trail. Because right now it's fairly quiet when you're cruising. At idle, if I were to start it in the garage here and idle it, it sounds nice, that low B V-twin sound. But when you're driving on the trail, I mean, you can't even hear her coming if she's behind you. So nice exhaust on it, nothing too loud. I think will do the trick. And then, of course, tune it for that so that the fuel tuning works with the exhaust system. That kind of gets into the air intake. There's not much in the way of air intake. A lot of times with, like, say, a sport quad, you do an exhaust and you tune it and you couple that with better air intake or an air filter adapter or something like that to get a little more airflow. And they call that the big three usually in the sport quad world. But with this, there isn't any of that. There's no Airbox modifications that I know of you can make. And the Airbox design, if I'm being honest with you, I'm not a fan of it. And it's the way the filter sits in these Airboxes. The filter is got a round reducer on it, and it slips inside of a hole in the Airbox. So you have your cap. You take the cap off. It's under the seat. You have to take this. That's the other thing too. Is you have to take once you take the seat off, you still can't access the Airbox. You'll see the Airbox is back there. Now, you can see the bottom of the cap, the air filter cap. They take off, but you got to pull this whole hood off. There's pins that go in the fender there, grommets here, and there's grommets here, and it's hooked in. So you got to be careful yanking all this stuff up that you don't break one of the tabs, because now you're gonna need a whole new hood. And you want to check your air filter regularly. So it's a little bit cumbersome. In all honesty, this is a really horrible design. I don't know why they couldn't just have made like some type of hatch here or a small section here that you can remove and still leave the rest of the hood on and then access the Airbox. And then the other part I don't like is the air filter design. Like I was saying, the dirty side of the Airbox, which is the front section, which is where all the dirty air comes in and your filter sits. And then through the filter and the other side is kind of like a wall in the Airbox about here. And this is the clean side, and that goes down to your throttle body. So the way the air filter sits and transitions into the clean side is there's no neck or anything that comes off of the wall of the Airbox. It's just a hole, and the air filter slips inside of that hole, and the cover holds it, wedges it tight. Now, I have found that with the stock air filter, it was getting a little bit of dust into the clean side of the Airbox, believe it or not. Very, very little bit. Caught it right away after like one ride. And then what I did was I'll show you what I bought. I bought this stuff here. It's K&N brand, but there's other companies that make it. It's just air filter grease, sealing grease. So what you do is it's very thick and pasty. And it's not like regular grease where it won't melt when it gets hot and then gets sucked into your Airbox. The grease is like glue. I mean, I'm squeezing it and it's barely coming out. It's very thick. So you put that around the sealing surface of the air filter where it goes into the hole and seats around it. And then that prevents any dust from getting sucked past the sealing surface and the mating surface of the air filter. So we also ditched the stock paper air filter for foam air filters. They just filter dusty conditions better. Stock paper air filter with the foam around it didn't really do that good. Like I said, I was getting dust past the stock one, so we got rid of that. We run either a uni filter, which again, make sure you use that stuff. It's got a rubber end cap on it on the uni. It's all one piece, the uni filter. And then what we have in there right now is a twin air filter, which is sold by Can-Am. I like the way the Uni's design is better. I know people complain because they're harder to clean. You can't take the foam off. But if you do it right, I have no problems cleaning them. But I think the foam air filter is the way to go anyway. Once you get rid of your stock air one, paper one, especially if you're right in dusty conditions. The air boxes on these things, from what I've seen, tend to get some oil in them on the clean side, and there's a drain on the airbox. You have a drain on the airbox on the clean side and the dirty side. People have talked about oil getting in the clean side of the airbox, and that can happen if you overfill your engine or if you tip the machine over or anything like that. We had gotten some oil in the airbox when my wife first had the machine, maybe about a week into it. She had a close call, almost a rollover, but she kind of held it up. The machine didn't go completely over; it kind of landed on her. We got it back on its feet, and the next day there was oil in the clean side of the airbox, so I just pulled the drain off and let the oil drip out, and that was it. I haven't gotten oil in the airbox for any other reason. Some people do; they may ride a lot of wheelies or overfill their engine maybe, because what happens is your crankcase vent just goes up to the clean side of the airbox, not the dirty side, so you will get oil there. And then you could potentially be sucking that into your engine and be blowing smoke thinking you have a bad motor, but you're really just burning the oil that's going into your airbox. And other than that, it's been a good machine. My wife likes it. She really likes it. Even when I got my Scrambler, which does have a much more plush ride than the Renegade does, she rode both, and she likes her Renegade better. The Renegade actually it also costs a lot less too than the Scrambler, which is another upside. It's about $4,000 cheaper new. And the only thing I don't like about the Renegade is the seating. It's not that big of a problem, but when you're sitting on it, your knees, I mean, it's really wide between the knees. It's just not contoured in a very comfortable way. When you stand, you really got to almost be your legs like in a really wide V and have your feet to the outside of the pegs. It's very hard and very uncomfortable if you want to ride in tight and keep your legs in close. It's very hard doing this machine standing up. Seated, not really a problem, but when you're standing, you kind of got to move your feet to the outside to get a comfortable position, just because it's so wide between. It's almost like a horse saddle, the seat. It's very wide here. Scrambler and some other machines where the motor is mounted differently and the transmission is mounted to the rear of the motor. This transmission is mounted to the side, so they got to make it wide. Obviously, it's easier for belt maintenance, but it does make it wide between the legs and between the feet. So if you're a small person, that may be, I definitely suggest sitting on one and making sure you're 100% comfortable before you take the plunge, because you don't want to be out riding all day and then find it's very uncomfortable for you with it being so wide between your legs. It's something you want to know before you spend $16,000 plus tax. So will we keep the machine, and or do we regret the purchase? First answer is yes, we are keeping it. No plans on getting rid of this machine. She really likes it, and we don't regret it. I had one of these as well previous to my Scrambler. If you guys have followed the channel, you'll know I had one for a brief time. I actually had one first. She had the Renegade 570. I bought a 1000. And then she really enjoyed the suspension and the power steering on the 1000, so she upgraded hers to a 1000 as well. And then I ended up moving on and wanted to try something different. I went to a Grizzly 700 for a while, and then ultimately the Scrambler, which is what I'm on right now. I will say, there are some things I personally, coming from somebody who doesn't ride the Can-Am every day, my wife does, there are some things I miss about this machine over the Scrambler. And one of those is the power. There's nothing like this machine power-wise. It is just absolute animal on the trail. I mean, if it's in sport mode, and she don't ride it in sport mode, she keeps it in, there's 3 modes. There's eco mode, which is very, very tamed down. Almost too tame, to the point where it's, you really got to almost jam the throttle to get it to go anywhere. And then you have standard mode, which is very comfortable for her. And you get all the power, but it's not quick. It comes on slower. And then you put it in sport mode, and that's just beast mode. I mean, that thing is just all the power, all the jam right at your fingertips. As soon as you blip that throttle, it's 91 horsepower come alive. It's an absolute animal. It'll blow the tires off it. And then that's fun because you're in the trail and you're messing around, come up on a little log or a little just a little whoop in the trail, and you can just blip the throttle and just the front tires come off the ground, and it makes it fun. You know what I mean? The Scrambler, even though it's 1,000 cc's and 89 horsepower, is nowhere near the bottom end power of this thing. This thing blows it away in that regard. So if you're looking for raw power, this is the machine, and this will do almost everything you want out of a machine. And if you're not an experienced rider, you can tame it down. So my wife does. She doesn't keep it in sport mode. She's never in sport mode unless we go to the dunes with it. And that kind of leads me to the next thing. So what have we done with the machine? What has it excelled in? I would say it's excelled in almost everything. The downside of it would be if you're doing very technical, rocky trails or climbing, anything like that, it doesn't articulate well as, say, a Scrambler or something with more suspension travel. It's got about 10 inches of suspension travel, but it's almost like you don't feel like it has 10 inches because it's very rigid side to side. There's not much flex independently of the front tires. And these newer ones do have sway bars on the front. I'm almost tempted to remove the front sway bar and test it out and just see, because the older Renegades never had front sway bars. So if you're doing a slower technical trail riding, I'm very curious. Maybe we'll do a video testing it out. Just disconnect the front sway bar, take it out, see how it feels on high-speed trails and on the rough stuff. And I'll kind of give you my feedback. I think that's an idea. That's something we should do, and maybe we'll put that on the list of videos here in the future. But yeah, that's a downside. It doesn't articulate well, stuff like that. So if you're doing those type of trails regularly, I would say you're gonna have to make some modifications or go with a different machine, because this machine is meant to go fast and have the power that you want on tap and to do almost anything. But again, rock crawling, technical trails is probably, I would say, it can do it, but that would be, if any situation where it's weak point, I would say that would be it. In terms of taking it to the sand dunes, we had this thing at Glamis, stock tires, aired down, excuse me, to about 5 to 6 psi, and she had it in 4-wheel drive and just floated over everything. I tried it out, went up some big sand bowls, and it just climbs right up, half throttle, no problem. I mean, it's just an absolute animal. So it's good there. If you ride a lot of sand dunes, this is great. We ride with our group of guys. We go to Little Sarah, Oklahoma sand dunes, and there's a guy that has a Can-Am Renegade, and he takes it every year, and it's awesome. It's usually one of the only ones still running at the end of the trip. Other guys are breaking down, and he tows them all out with his Renegade. It runs without a hiccup. It's great. So it does very good in the dunes. And if you're really a big duner and you go a lot, you can get paddles for these and just get extra set of wheels and throw some paddles on it. Make it that much better. But we do live here in southern Arizona, so a large majority of its life has been on desert trails. I would say, let me take that back. Desert trails and mountain trails. Two different things, but we live right near the mountains. We take the desert trails right to the mountains and then ride the mountains right home in the desert. And in those type of trails, you can really hoof it. I mean, and it goes. It handles well. I think better tires, and this thing would handle awesome. So again, another reason why I want to widen it out a little bit. Put some little less round profile tires on it, maybe a little flatter of a profile tire on it. Something a little more knobby, a little more contact patch tread. Because the rear tires here, you can see, there are huge spaces between them. Something a little tighter center contact patch for the hard stuff, hard pack, and the desert stuff. We've already got a puncture in one of these and plugged it. It's been good since, but they do tend to be very soft, these tires, and roll a lot. The sidewalls tend to roll very easy. You can feel them rolling on the wheel, side to side when you're turning. So that's why I think a stiffer tire and a better tire and widening it is really going to improve the handling drastically. So we'll see. That's something we're flirting with doing. And but yeah, desert and mountain trails is mainly what it's done. And it does it all well. I mean, it's an extremely capable machine for that type of stuff. Obviously, if you live in the woods and you're a woods rider, this machine's right up your alley. You got 4x4, it's sporty, it's powerful, it's fast, it's narrow enough to get through the trees. A scrambler in that situation would probably be a detriment because it's so wide. But and that's why they use these for GNCC racing again. But we live out here in the desert where it's a little more open, so we want to play with the widening of it, the width of it. I really wish it would be awesome if Can-Am, if you're listening, come out. You don't have to get rid of this platform where it's 49 inches wide and keep it under 50. Come out an alternate version, like an RR version where it's wider. You get 50. You don't even have to go to 55 like Scrambler. It can be 52, 53 inches wide or whatever. For something for the guys out west more. And I think they would sell like hotcakes because that's really its only downside is for that type of, again, rock crawling stuff. You go to Moab, Utah, stuff like that, and guys do that stuff on ATVs. Something that was a little wider and stable and articulated a little better in the front, I think would be a smash hit. And they sell these things like hotcakes. They sell crazy. So I can imagine a wider one would sell just as good. I think that's something they should do. That would be something I would buy for sure, because you got the benefit of the width plus that amazing Can-Am power. I mean, that would be the ultimate machine, in my opinion. If Can-Am had a 55-inch wide machine, like the Scrambler, I would never have bought the Scrambler. I would have gotten the Can-Am 55-inch wide all day, because the fun factor of this machine is, in power-wise, is way higher than the Scrambler. The Scrambler's fun factor comes in different ways because of the suspension and what it's capable of. But this machine, in terms of raw power, it's just exciting. So that's pretty much it. I think that'll wrap up this video. I've kind of rambled for about 40 minutes here. Hope this was informative for some of you thinking about getting a machine, reliability-wise, long-term, how it's held up. I mean, the paint on the fenders, everything's held up well. We do take care of the machines. We wash them. We spray wax the fenders and keep them protected. They are garaged, so that has helped. But this machine, I really just rinsed off and hand washed quick. It wasn't really a heavy wash, just for the video. And it looks good, It still looks, it's holding up really well. I'd say it's a very high quality built machine. I have no fear of it not lasting a long time with proper maintenance. It seems to be really quality. Nothing's worn out on it yet. Bushings, steering feels tight as day. We got it. Everything does. It starts right up. No issues there. Doesn't use oil. Drawback would be, again, the air filter design. If they could fix that, it would probably be the perfect. And maybe change the rear diff fluid a little easier. But if we can change those couple things, Can-Am, if you're listening, the fluid changes, make them a little easier, and redesign the airbox a little bit. And I think you'd have a winner here, and then maybe come out with a wider one. But great machine. I give it 3 thumbs up if I had 3 hands. But 2 thumbs up here from Odyssey Off-Road. If you're thinking about buying one and we're hesitant on reliability, I would have no worries about reliability. These things have been building them forever. These Can-Am motors are flawless. They run terrific and last a very long time. There's well-documented cases of people out there with many thousands of miles on these things. And with proper fluid changes and proper maintenance, they will last you for a very long time. So this is Joe with Odyssey Off-Road. Smash that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you want more Renegade content, we definitely got more coming your way. Like I said, this year coming up here, we're going to get cracking on some modifications for the machine and do some compare and contrast videos with that and the Scrambler. So smash the subscribe button if you haven't already. Smash the like button if you liked the video. If you didn't, no problem. That's okay too. Thanks for sticking around this long in the video. Get out on the trail, ride safe, guys, and we'll see you out there.